Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to get started with Calendar Time plugin, installing it into a game project, and using the templates for a quick and simple setup. So I'm going to create a brand new game project. Let's go create and say Calendar Time tutorial. So the Godot window is going to open up, and we want to bring in an add-ons folder and a templates folder. So I'm going to right click here, open in File Manager. If you're in a typical project, you probably already have an add-ons folder. So we can expand our zip. We're going to go into plugin, and here you'll see addons/calendar time. If you have an add-ons folder, just bring in calendar time and put it in add-ons, or for convenience, you can bring in this add-ons folder, which will create that for you into the game project. Then if you want the templates, which is referring to the scene files and the resources, then you can grab templates as well. So just like before, we can drag this into the game project. Now, once you bring in the templates, you can move and edit those however you want. So if you're going to take, let's say, the calendar and make it into your primary game asset, then I would actually recommend you move it out of the templates so that if you ever install new templates, they don't override. For now, though, let's jump back into this game. And then we're going to want a gameplay scene. So I'm going to click Other Node here to get started, making the root node a base node. That just means it has no 2D or 3D components, no transform. So that's what I'll usually do for my root scene. And then I'll save this into the game project. So maybe I have a scenes folder, and I'll save gameplay.tscn inside of that. Now we want to jump into templates calendar time and bring in the default time host. So you can also right click on your node hierarchy and add a time host node. That is the main node for calendar time. Or we could just drag this whole scene in here. And the advantage of doing that is that over on the right, we have the clocks predefined. Now the default timescale, if I recall, multiplies the real world time by 1,000 to get the speed of the game, because generally you don't want a full game day to be equal to a real world day. That would take forever. So you can edit the timescale and customize that here if you want this to affect all clocks. And we can see in this clocks array that you can actually have multiple clocks. So the time host drives the clocks, and then the clocks can have their own time configurations if you need to customize that. For instance, you might be running 2 different game worlds or planets at the same time, and maybe you do have a need for 2 clocks. In most cases, just 1. So the 4 seasons clock by default gives you a calendar that has 4 months. Each month is effectively a season: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And you can customize any part of this. So if you need to change the number of days, or you want to use real world months like January, February, that's perfectly doable. And we've also got default times of days, just like in the demos for the calendar time plugin. So dawn, daytime, dusk, and night. Very likely you would want to have more of your own custom times of days, and you can use each of those times of days for triggering your own events, since when a clock hits a time of day, that changes the active time of day and triggers a signal event. I'll cover that more in future tutorials though. So we have the time host there. And we want to add in some UI. So generally for UI, I'll put that all on a canvas layer parent. So that keeps it separate from the game world. If we right click and add a child node, canvas layer, we can see independent rendering of objects within a 2D scene. So everything under the canvas layer is its own separate thing. It has nothing to do with your 2D or 3D game world. And then I might call this the UI layer. I might right click and add a control parent. This is just kind of my own workflow. So a HUD, heads up display, and I would want this to be layout, full rect, go to mouse, turn this to ignore. Now the reason you would create a HUD is so that you can slap a theme on it, and all child objects are going to inherit that theme. So it helps with consistency. So now if we jump into the UI templates, we can add in the time dial would be an obvious one. And then we can also grab let's say the calendar month display, put that under the HUD, and the date time display as well. So if I go to the HUD root here and I change the theme, like let's say to the 4 seasons theme, then that is going to apply to everything under here. I think the calendar display is configured to have that theme by default. So now this matches this in terms of theming. Now I'm probably going to also increase the window sizes. The calendar's a bit big in the default window size. It's more targeted towards like a 1920 by 1080 pixel resolution here in project settings, display window. Okay, so we do that. And yeah, now the UI looks a bit more appropriate. If we were to hit play and select the current scene as our main scene, then we're going to get a debug message because there's no calendar trigger button. So if we check under the errors here, it's going to warn that we haven't configured a toggle action. So we want to go to project settings, input map, and add in calendar here as an action. I'll typically use like C as a default for that, C for calendar. We can close. Now, if we run the scene again, we can toggle that on and off with the C button, and you can close the calendar with the buttons as well. Jump through this. You can also already see that the time dial and the time of day displays are already triggering at their 1000 times game speed, since those are pre-configured with the same clock that default time clock has. So effectively, if you have UI and you want that to respond to the same time clock, you assign the resource in the inspector. So I can show you quickly what that looks like. If we click on one of these UIs, right, you'll see the clock is assigned here. So when you use resources, if you don't know in Godot, it allows you to connect an object between different unrelated nodes by assigning the same object to each of their inspectors. So that means nothing ever needs to directly reference the time host. Instead, you just assign the clock that UI should respond to. So that'll be helpful if you're creating your own UIs, or if you are creating your own event triggers in your game logic, then you would want to look into the signals that would exist on the clocks. So actually, if we look at the clock script, and of course, there's API and guide pages on christutorials.com if you need them, right? So if we look into the clock script here, let's go down a little bit, then we'll see there's a time signal bus. So the time signal bus has all of the signals that you would typically need when you need to trigger game events. So if we look into the signal bus, then you can see all of these events you can connect to for your own game logic. So if you need something to trigger when the day finishes, here's where you would connect into that. So to get access, you would reference the game clock and then find the signal bus property and then connect and disconnect to those signals for your game logic events. Like I said, I'll have more tutorials on this in the future. This is just a quick setup guide. So hopefully this got you started. At least the template UIs are working for you guys, and I'll be back with the more in-depth tutorials soon. There's also guides in the add-on as well. So these are basically the same ones you would find on the website. If you search .md for markdown file, then you'll see that these guides also will exist on the game project as well, and the guides folder of the plugin. But they also exist on the website as well as the API pages for basically all the classes that are contained within Calendar Time. So that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching to the end. You can find Calendar Time on itch.io, Patreon, YouTube subscriptions, and Ko-Fi as well. And I'll see you guys on my future video content.